The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. RSA offers business-driven security solutions that provide organizations with a unified approach to managing digital risk that hinges on integrated visibility, automated insights, and coordinated actions. RSA solutions are designed to effectively detect and respond to advanced attacks, manage user access control, and reduce business risk, fraud, and cybercrime. RSA protects millions of users around the world and helps more than 90% of the Fortune 500 companies thrive and continuously adapt to transformational change. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/RSA Security.
Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. We've been talking to Matt Allen, Senior Solutions Engineer for a company called Viavi. Before we jump back into our conversation and actually give Matt a chance to show us a little bit of what Viavi offers for organizations, do have a couple more mostly cancellation announcements. Secure World Boston was scheduled for March 25th and 26th at the Heinz Convention Center, which I assume is in Boston. The event's been postponed until further notice, and we'll keep you in the loop as soon as we know more. Also, InfoSec World 2020 was originally scheduled for March 30th through April 1st, 2020 at the Disney Contemporary Resort in Orlando, Florida. This conference has been rescheduled for June 22nd through 24th. And of course, this is all due to the shutdown of the country for COVID-19. Security Weekly listeners, if you still want to get in on InfoSec World, you can go to our website, securityweekly.com/ISW 2020 and register for a 15% discount. Also, we are accepting sponsorship and signups to do micro interviews on site. So let's think positively, look to the future, and go out there and sign up for InfoSec World 2020. And hopefully it won't be pushed back from June as well. All right. So, Matt, we left off in the first segment trying to set you up with an opportunity to show and share with us a little bit about what Viavi does in terms of providing the necessary automation for network engineers and people that are responsible for security organizations, and how those two groups can play together, because I know that was something we discussed about. You know, how the automation can help, and then hopefully you can sort of lay over the top of it, but also keep in mind it doesn't do all of the job for you. So I'll let you kind of take the mic, and if you have something to share, I think Johnny's ready to help you.
Sure. Let's do some visuals, and we can start talking about the death of network engineering as we know it.
And while you're bringing it up, I know Matt had a question for you, Matt. If you want to try to distract him while he's trying to do some technical work here.
Well, Matt, as we talk about this a little bit, I was down at Orange County Public Schools last week for their 3rd annual Cyber Challenge, and one of the questions that came up from the kids was, how important is the networking skill set? Some of these kids aren't learning at the network layer, or they don't enjoy it, right? They enjoy going out and using some of the pen testing tools and cracking passwords and all this other stuff. And, you know, I think one of the things that's really important to understand is some of us came from the networking side. I had early networking in my security career, and a lot of people came out of the networking side, but the network's still important. So, you know, I tried to impress on these kids that, look, the data still moves through a network somewhere. And if you don't understand the network and how it works, it's going to be really hard in your job if you're a defender or maybe even a penetration tester, right? To be successul. So I want you said the death of the network engineer, but I think the network's still important here.
Right. It's so I got my ethical hacker certification, and going through that process, and I speak about it when I speak at conventions or whatever else, and I have a lot of kids come up to me and they go, I want to be a hacker. And they have kind of this idea of what that means. They get to wear a hoodie and be a hacker, right?
You forgot the ski mask and gloves because they're so much fun to type in. Okay,
right. So one of the first, and we even talked about like public resources that can help you level up your skill in the SecOps world. One of them that I recommend out of the gate is called hackthebox.eu. It is open penetration testing labs to where it's essentially capture the flag. All kinds of different OSs, different puzzles where they've hidden data inside things. And there's a lot of PCAP puzzles in there as well. So they're like, here's a trace file, go find the flag. And the fact that most of these kids didn't know step one of how communication worked. And going back to the beginning and going, you cannot compromise a machine. You're not going to be able to hack anything if you don't know how to talk to it. If you don't know what's even the underlying signaling that's happening, you're not going to be able to move laterally, figure out what's there. You're not going to be able to find what you can exploit. And then you're back to loading Kali Linux on your laptop and trying to hack your roommate's Wi-Fi, right? In order to understand what's vulnerable, you have to understand how everything talks at all the layers. So I make them go back and learn the OSI model and say, okay, at this point, you're at layer 7 and you can start to exploit, but you got to understand what's happening at layers 3, 4, all this stuff, so you can swim. Otherwise, you can't swim. Did that kind of answer your question? And
oh yeah,
it's not sexy. It's a lot of ones and zeros. And I figuring out like what is an IP subnet. That's usually one of my baseline tests. Is I go, if I gave you a IP address and a subnet mask, could you tell me what is probably the default gateway? And if they can't do it, I'm like, go figure out what that means. Before
are we allowed to use a calculator?
You can use a calculator. I'm one of those dudes. Like, if you,
how about an abacus?
Sorry, what was that?
How about an abacus if you're really old?
An abacus.
I can use an abacus.
Brave.
Hey, Jeff, you might as well throw the slide rule in there while you're at it.
I tried to. Hey, real quickly though, Matt, we're trying to attract an audience with this podcast that may not necessarily have a networking background or even a programming background. Could you provide a very brief description or definition of what is a PCAP?
Oh, okay. So coming from a packet sniffing background, which is essentially software that is taking a copy of every 1 and 0 that's hitting the wire. Right. So just how that, supposedly you have Big Brother that's recording all of our phone calls somewhere. It's that. So where it's taking a copy of everything and then recording it. When you take a slice of that, and go through line by line and see, what machine was talking to what machine over what port, and that's split out. It stands for packet capture, PCAP. And that's the pretty standard format. And you can open it up, and I'll actually show you an example of that later. So it'll make more sense.
All right. I mean, when I started doing packet capturing back in the day, it was with like a 40, 50 pound appliance that had to be wheeled around on a cart and plugged in manually to the back of the routers.
Times have changed. I mean, if it's a small amount of data, you can use a piece of software. Viavi, we're known for being able to capture in the enterprise at the core switch, 50 gigabits, fully loaded, one box. You just hand me the cable, and I can keep up with it. And I'll show you an example of that too. The upside is for your network teams, they're able to solve problems really quickly. There's no, well, my Monday morning conference call was bad, and now you have to wait till next Monday to try and troubleshoot it. You can actually, it's like a TiVo. You just rewind to the Monday conference call, pull it out, look at the PCAP, and start to realize, is it because this guy was sitting in Starbucks and he's complaining? Or was there a problem on the server and it was spitting out errors? You have that forensic data to tell you what happened.
Cool. Thank you.
I feel like I took the long way to answer your question. When it comes to networking, I'm pretty passionate about it.
Well, I just try to be sensitive to our audience because it's very common in our industry to throw a lot of jargon and acronyms around, and we assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. And there's always somebody out there that doesn't have a clue, and usually if they ask, turns out 50% of the audience or greater doesn't have a clue what the people are talking about. So I like to defer to let's just make sure we're level setting on definition. So I appreciate the little sidebar. Let's go back to what you're trying to show us.
Let me fly through this. I'll give an example of cheat mode versus old school knuckle grinding mode for network troubleshooting. I usually start with this when people ask me, like, so what does Viavi do, especially lately? This rectangle over here on the right that says packets, this is where historically Viavi, formerly Network Instruments, has played solidly for over 2 decades. The biggest, best, fast, plug it into your data center, and we can take a copy of everything that's going on and then do cool stuff with it. If you look at these other columns, you probably are already thinking of vendor logos that would fit inside these columns. So you're like, oh, I know my flow tool, or I know which tool I'm using to do SNMP, to do up-down monitoring on my servers and things like that. But what you'll realize is nobody's got the whole rectangle. I mean, you could kind of argue Cisco does with like a Frankenstein's monster of a bunch of tools that compete with each other, but nobody's saying, I do all of this. You just plug it in, and I'll tell you everything you need to know based on your network. This is what Viavi is doing. Is we're going after the whole rectangle. We started here, and we're nudging left, getting all this stuff. But more than just consuming flow, which is kind of an ancient technology. We talked about VPC briefly in a different conversation. We will consume IPFix, NetFlow, JFlow, SFlow, VPC logs, but then we will enrich that data with SNMP, enrich it, and this is the big one for SecOps people, is with user identity. And then enrich it with logging data, whether it's from firewalls, load balancers, what have you. And then this gets into being more complicated to understand who we compete with, because nobody's doing this. So if we consume flow, does that mean we compete with all the flow vendors? Well, yeah, kind of, but they're not enriching it and using it in the way we are. Just because we consume logs doesn't mean we're competing with all the massive log aggregators. It's not meant to consume every log from every server in every place. It's more surgical than that. Does that make sense, what I'm describing?
Yeah, and I think what's unique and interesting here is the correlation of user identity with the flow data, and also trying to understand it from a session perspective, right? Because it's that contextual information that gives you better insight into actually who, or potentially who and what, versus just kind of the what layer, right?
So I usually start off with kind of the less flashy. What you'll notice is I have 2 tabs open here, right? So what we're doing is we're merging this flow-based tool set into our packet-based tool set. It's already been reskinned, and bit by bit, it's gonna come into one screen, which is kind of the point of this whole thing. What I'm doing here is, this is just a visual. Let me see if I can move my little camera out of the way. And this will take a second. This goes down to the philosophy of Viavi, right? Which is, we are the source of truth. There's no summarization. And from especially a SecOps standpoint, when you have intruders that know, I'm about to do something that is going to set off alarms, so I'm going to run interference. I'm going to run an attack from the inside, an attack from the outside, all this other stuff, and try and hide my movement at this critical time. And try and force your tools to get overloaded so he gets through scot-free, right? This is the main point I want to show. I just pulled for Chicago for the past 2 hours, and it's saying there's 41,640 flow records. Every flow that happened on that device is recorded. So from a SecOps standpoint, you can take this to your board of directors and answer the question, did any data get out? There's no, well, we don't know. That's why you go with Viavi's tools, is to have a source of truth answer that's court admissible, right? On top of that, and I'll show one feature that's actually being migrated into Apex. And I don't like to throw out a lot of vendor jargon, because I know to you guys, Apex is just another word. For us, Apex is the reporting layer for the packet-based reporting, and we're going to bring everything into Apex, right? So right now we have kind of this flow reporting. There's a map that is looking to see if there's any machines talking to known bad actors on the internet. And if I go, I've clicked the other tab and I'm looking in Apex, they've migrated that into this and made it look all slick. And of course, they have all kinds of stuff running, so you have some visuals to look at. But this is, once again, using our packet-based history, now bringing other data sources into it. And I've already used it once today, but the single pane of glass, what everybody's going for, the bottom line is you don't want to have to learn more tools. Once you get something you like, you just want to stick with that, and instead of having to learn 20 different things to answer 20 different questions.
So it's fun that you bring up reporting, right? In compliance, I'm gonna ask you a question, but I want to set it up just a little bit, right, for people that are listening but can't necessarily view what you're showing, right? In compliance, there is such a thing as auditable repositories, right?
Yeah.
So how does Viavi's solution allow you to either A, see data going into a repository, or B, confirm that the data is there, right? Or does something with the data in a repository, right? So help bring this into a compliance perspective just for a hot second.
Okay. I'm going to answer this in the way that I think you want, and redirect me if I get a little off base. So
Sure.
The bottom line is, from a network perspective, we're getting a copy of everything, including the payload of the data. When you have a need to save that off, you could absolutely mine that off. It's like, I use the TiVo example a lot because it's tech that people are familiar with. You tag that TV show and say never delete it. We do that in the sense of you can mine that data off, save it in long-term storage, and then you have it before. This becomes extremely relevant when it comes to attacks or investigation of data breaches. So instead of saying, I don't know which of my 50 million customers data is leased, so we have to assume it's all of them, I use the word court admissible a lot. You have court admissible proof of what did or did not happen, what did leave the network, what data was inside that transmission. And I'll show you an example of that in a second, of how you can go to the ones and zeros and see what actually happened. Did that answer your question, kind of?
Sort of. So what you're saying is that you have the artifacts to show that data has been moved into a repository, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So how does Viavi's system act as a data repository, right? I get that it's a supporting repository, right? In ephemeral sense, right? But how does it act as a repository itself, right? Can you dive into that?
Yeah. Okay. Let me I'll do one more thing in this, and then I will give you an example that I think is going to directly answer your question. So using flow data, I wouldn't call this a repository. The difference that I say between flow data and packet data is the difference between looking at your cell phone bill and having a recording of your phone call. So with flow data, you see source, you see destination, you see how long they talked, but you don't have the content of what was discussed. With packet data, you can replay the phone call. And I'll show you that in a bit, and we'll go through some of the data.
Okay.
And I believe that matches your definition of repository. Last thing that I show with flow data, this bit right here, which nobody is doing. I can search on Bob. So not an IP address, not a MAC address. No, you don't got to be a network geek to do this bit. I click go, and it says, okay, who used the username Bob? What IP did he get? What did that machine do? I click the button. It draws me a map. Here's what Bob did. Bob talked DNS out. He got DNS back. From
That's
a event remediation standpoint, this is gold. And I'd say more than all the others saying, you have a source of truth. It's a, high fidelity forensic pool of what exactly happened. Understanding that Bob used a bad password and now someone's using it, understanding what machine it got, what it did from there within seconds. This will often take hours or days. And so people look at this, see I do it in a couple seconds, and there's your reason right there. I got, 3 guys, they're all overloaded. This could be super useful. Right?
So what you're showing for people that hold on, Josh, what you're showing for people that can't see this, right, is the actual network hops of where that packet went and what that packet did at each hop, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So let me ask a question. Let's say that that Bob was not the smartest.
Yep.
And so he did 2 or 3 stupid things, one before lunch, one after lunch, one just before he left. Yep. So when you did the search for Bob, you'd find all those different things.
Absolutely. Now, my window is set for 12 hours. But if I need to expand this to search for an entire day or even months, since, like I mentioned, the flow data is very lightweight. It's like your cell phone bill. It's just summarizing who talked to what, how much. We can store a lot of this. So you can go back a month and go, when exactly did Bob's username start acting funny? And
no, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So now can I overlay all the different places that he went? You're showing me one session, one period of idiocy, whatever you want to call it. Can you show or one session? Can you show me multiple sessions on the screen? Can I see a map of all the places that he went? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're looking for a more.
He wants a bigger view.
I'm doing it on the fly to see if
I'm excited.
When Bob's done more stuff.
I mean,
I'm excited simply because what you've been describing as flow traffic. I'm like, this sure sounds like traffic analysis. Back to my DoD days. You're essentially looking at the packet headers, and you're collecting information, not including the payload of the packets, which is exactly what traffic analysis is.
The way the data is set up for our demo lab, I think what I have right now is just this one conversation. We're kind of trying to keep it lightweight.
That's fine.
But
if there were multiples, I could see all of them.
Beefy stuff if we want to do that.
No, it's fine. I'm just curious if the capability is there, because when I can see Bob over a month and he did 3 different things, and I go, this thing, and this thing, they don't look like Bob. Something's wrong. They're from China or whatever.
Right. If I can overlay all those. I could try another one, and I'm doing this on the fly just to see if I.
No, I know, and I'm sorry. I don't mean to be that guy, but
we are bowing to the demo gods.
Josh is that guy.
Josh.
What can I say? I'm good at being that guy.
Here we go. Destination apps, 57 IPs.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's nice. Can you? Look at that.
Yes, you can expand. You can go around.
Is that a full, that's a dynamic map? Look at that. Hello,
yes, it
baby.
is a dynamic map. For all the people that can't see
it's showing directed acyclic graph.
For those that are just listening, go back and watch the video.
Yeah, and so who did I get DNS for? It does resolve it. 8888 is Google's DNS servers. You hover.
Oh, that's
all
beautiful.
That fun stuff.
So for those that are just listening to the audio, we're seeing effectively a mind map or Visio map of every piece of traffic that this particular username, what was it, Max?
Matt. I used my own to see what I'd thrown in there.
Matt actually sent out that went through the traffic monitoring system. We're seeing DNS. We're seeing where the DNS resolver was, what DNS requests were made. It makes life. And it came
once it's in Viavi's system, is there any way of changing the data in the system, or is it locked up? Right.
It's locked up.
So let's take a step back. You were talking about court records, right? And this being admissible in court, right? Being used for cases and such. Right. That's where I'm headed with this question. Is there a way to change the data inside of a Viavi system once it's installed and grabbing it, or is it locked up? And can you dive in a little bit?
No, it's locked up. It's stored in a proprietary format, and so I mean this is what we have. Very large customers that use this to go to court to prove nothing was released Or the opposite, if there's an intellectual property case, it will prove, yeah, this activity, this employee copied all of this data 2 days before they walked out of the building and left. It's unalterable once you write it down.
Nice.
I know we're going to bump up against the top of our window, so let me fly through this very quickly.
Go for it.
I'm going to skip the performance troubleshooting stuff since we're more talking on a security topic. And I'll show you what it's like if I have someone that I say I suspect that he sent proprietary data out in email, and I want to go find what happened. So I type in @SMTP for email. And I know this, I'm shortcutting the story because I know we're bumping up on time, but saying, okay, I know this machine is what I'm looking for. I know it's email. Show me what was actually transmitted.
Just remember
across.
The time is a compliance guideline.
Okay. It's a guideline. It's more of a guideline.
Wow.
So what I'm doing to people that can't see, I'm typing in for the past hour, give me all the email from this machine that was transmitted over the network. And it is done. And now when I open this, it's going to open it up in Wireshark. So for all those people that are not network geeks, Wireshark is sort of the industry standard freeware tool for capturing data and also decoding it. So it'll show you line by line what happened. If you can see the screen and you're not a network geek, check this out. This can get into creepy territory because I'm going to start rebuilding what actually happened. So we'll open it up in Wireshark.
Hey, remember that piece of paper you signed when you took the job? Every email you send is a corporate email, and we own it. This is where it goes.
Yeah. So this is a back and forth of an email conversation, a 3-pane decode for those dabbling in network stuff. I'll get right to the punchline. Since email in general is clear text, this is all clear text. So I can right click it and say, I want to follow this TCP stream, and I'm reading your email. And I didn't have to get into your email server or do anything like that. I just sniffed your clear text email flying across the wire. And this is why, like, ladies and gentlemen, you don't send credit card numbers or any of your personal information through emails because in general, it's super vulnerable. So this will tell me
violation of PCI.
Yeah, and that's all the compliance problems. Yeah. But whether this is a DNS conversation, and I'm looking to see, is he trying to send data out using DNS? Is he sending out data via email? There's some really interesting called data exfiltration techniques using Twitter, because Twitter's usually allowed in corporations. You can connect to Twitter, and people were leaking data out 140 characters at a time to go back and look at a conversation and see, okay, is this a bunch of ones and zeros because they're stealing data or info from my network, or is he just posting his picture of a bagel from breakfast?
Let me ask you a question. You pull up Twitter, right? You mentioned Twitter. If I have somebody in my organization that's leaking data, say through, I don't know, Minecraft, would we be able to see that?
The answer is yeah. Anything that happens on the network you can see. You have to overcome the challenge of, is it encrypted or not? And that's a whole separate discussion where enterprises are wanting to control all encryption. They want everything to be nice and secure, but they also want to have eyes into it if they need it and control the keys. If you can,
that's where flow becomes important, because you can see some pretty suspicious damning, network connectivity and communications without even knowing what the payload is, because the headers at some level are typically not encrypted.
That's absolutely true. And this becomes a challenge of data exfiltration in general. There's a great article talking about people wrapping data inside of a video and posting it to YouTube. And you can play the video on YouTube. You have to know what you're looking for, and you have to know, again, going back to like having a human following their gut, and they're like, why is Bob in marketing connecting to Minecraft? And then figuring out, reverse engineering what exactly happened. That's the game. And I mean, that's why we got into this, right? To catch the bad guys, to figure out what they're doing, and go get them.
In the famous Saturday Night Live skit where it's all about the cowbell. What most people don't know is the cowbell is actually Morse code.
Is that true?
Totally bullshitting you right now.
I was like, no way.
I don't think, in the song, I think it's kind of a 4 on the floor beat with a cowbell, right?
I think you just had all of us step into a cow patty. What the
heck? He's hacking our brains. Don't listen to him.
Jeff, you bastard.
I had you going for a minute.
Yeah. So that's why you would have packet level forensic detail from a SecOps standpoint. From a performance standpoint, I'll click 2 buttons and show you the cheat mode. So people that don't want to have to learn all the ones and zeros and a TCP handshake and call and response and all that, you click the button and it tells you, hey, my Amazon Midwest resources connecting to New York, it's a server problem. And you click it, and it's looking at layer 4 for any network geeks, the timing, and going, the server itself is responding too slow. So then I start looking at the CPU, the disk, and all this. And we do all this for you, so you don't have to be a network geek to solve it. Because like I said, we're a dying breed. People just want the answer to go about their day.
Well, we do need to wrap up, but let's try to summarize. I'm going to give you the last word, so to speak. The original setup was, how does Viavi's tools and solutions sort of bridge the gap between relying totally on automation, thinking it's doing the job, checking the box for compliance or security, and you've demonstrated some visuals of what you can do with your data, but final pitch, if you will. How is what you're doing, what you've demonstrated and shown us over the last several minutes, with your own commentary? That's fine. How are you creating this environment where you're using automation and tools necessarily, but you're allowing for or enabling the human intervention which we believe is required?
That's a great setup. I'd say if you're going to take one thing away from this, and you think about Viavi, just the word visibility, whether you're talking about visibility into what particular machine was doing, what a username was doing, how much data is flowing around your network, what visibility means to different people is totally changing. And the network is changing too, right? People put stuff in clouds. You have developers that don't know step 1 about networking, building their own like virtual data centers and things like that. So being able to have an eye onto everything that's going on your network, that's what Viavi does better than anybody else. And in the finest detail to catch the bad guys that are trying to be low and slow and quiet. Also being able to catch the outlier problems for your NetOps guys, being able to rewind and go, which exact web call is giving us a headache. That's what Viavi does. Is we do high forensics fidelity. We do these customized workflows where it's click, 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 and we're really focused on the end user experience for all those that are stuck at home having to work at home. Help get to those problems quick. That's my last word. I don't want to go off too much on it, but that's what we do. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Very cool. I think, Matt, I think Viavi is scheduled to do a webinar at some point in the near future with Security Weekly. Hopefully we can lobby to have you come back and just do a deeper dive. I know I've got more questions, but we've been very impressed with what we're seeing so far. The compliance tie-in, of course, is there are certain compliance requirements, especially in PCI, to monitor what's going on and to be looking for anomalous malicious activity and detect it. That's one of the goals of security is, if not block it outright, to detect it early and minimize the damage. So appreciate you sharing with us today. We went off on a few tangents, but I think that they were informative. Until next time, this is the gang at Security and Compliance Weekly. Go forth and be compliant and secure.